Well, hey there. Um, so I'm Nazarene, and I used to make videos a long time ago. Um, and I was looking through some of my old videos that I actually delisted and made private, and realized I did actually say some fairly interesting things back in the day. They were a little unrefined, um, very rough around the edges in regards to the way that I spoke. Definitely a hallmark of the age that I was at the time. I was a young guy, and my videos were on interesting topics and topics that people found value in, but my delivery was about what you'd expect from a testosterone laced, uh, immature 20 something year old. Not that all the 20 something year olds are immature, but comparative to where I'm at now and my life experience is definitely a good bit um, not not from a maturity standpoint that I would find to be something I'm proud of. So a few things I'd like to say before I really kind of talk about what the purpose of why I'm making this is, what am I doing, why am I doing it, blah blah blah. A little, I talked about it a little bit there. So the format of this is really just me sort of talking the way that I normally talk, and I'm a very long-winded, long in the tooth, verbose person. Um, I that's just sort of how I've structured myself after many years. I sometimes find success with it, sometimes it turns people off, and that's fine. I don't mind the fact that not everyone is a fan of my style of articulation. Everyone has something, right? Like you're never gonna appeal to everybody, and that's totally fine. I think that's okay. So this is going to be informal. I don't even know the amount of editing I plan to even do with something like this. It to me is just almost like a one-sided conversation. Potentially there'll be more actual individuals involved in the conversations because I do have some friends that I have some interesting conversations with, and maybe those are things that I can share with people. So what am I doing? So I just kind of want to just return to making just videos where I kind of capture my thoughts and the things that I think about on a day-to-day basis. I think that will be very therapeutic for me to deal with certain things because I don't know about anyone else, but I'm thinking as I talk. So sometimes I'm actually saying things as a part of my thought process. So that externalization helps me. And so, a lot of people talk to themselves, and that is kind of a version of this process, right? Like you're sort of working out how you feel about things. So that's quite a bit of pretty much what this is sort of my internal monologue being made external, and then we'll kind of see from there where that goes. So there's no real structure to this. It's very informal. I may start talking about one thing that interests me and end up somewhere completely different. So what gives? Why am I doing that? Where's the value of that outside of the fact it's therapeutic to myself? Well, it also people do find value in this. I've been on Discord a lot over the last decade or so, and people tell me all the time they hear me talk about a variety of topics, and they find these things sort of interesting and valuable to themselves, and they actually apply some of these life lessons to themselves, and it helps enrich their lives. And I think where I'm going with that is, for me, I can't really have biological kids. Or at least I'm fairly certain I can't have them. And so I sort of have turned to the transfer of knowledge over the transfer of DNA, right? I do have two stepdaughters, and I'm engaged and what have you. So I do have the ability to pass on a legacy in that format. But I think to me it's very fulfilling to be able to just transfer information from my head to someone else's head, and potentially allow them to use that to better their life. That to me is a very cool thing, and some people may find that useful, some people may not, and that's totally fine. If you don't, you're not going to upset me. And then also, I have a lot of interesting stories. Last time I had really made an honest go at, sort of capturing my thoughts on video like this, um, was in between careers. So I just had left law enforcement. I was just getting started in technology. Well, now I'm a .NET developer. Sort of taught myself how to be a developer. I work for a Fortune 500. And I do some pretty interesting projects. And so I have some pretty interesting takes on the idea of being a self-taught engineer. And maybe I can pass some. I do some videos where I talk about that. Right. Last year, I survived a brain tumor, and I had about 20 brain surgeries. Spent about 5 to 6 months in the ICU. So I don't know how well this camera picks up any of my scars on my head, but I have a lot of scars on my head. I have a bump on the side of my head that is my ventricular peritoneal shunt, which is a tube that kind of keeps me alive. I'll have for the rest of my life. And I'm sure I'll talk about some of that, the lessons that I've learned from that, because that's a very unique experience, and I came away from that with a lot of lessons in life. And again, if I can pass on to you what I learned from having multiple brain surgeries without you having to have brain surgeries, then hey, we all sort of win. But I bring that up because you will notice some paralysis on my left side of my face. I am deaf now in this ear and paralyzed on the left side of my face quite a bit. So yeah, there will be some conversations about things that I learned there. And recently, through some work conversations, I've been encouraged to kind of talk about also my childhood and the abuses that I suffered as a kid, and some of the other things that I dealt with, like my father committing suicide and other things in that sort of capacity. And I think these are topics not often discussed, but I think that it's sort of important to talk about some of these things. And then, I again, like I said, I'm a developer, but I'm also an investor, and I've been very successful investing. I also like to do inventions and arts and crafts and 3D prints, and I been building some pretty cool cosplay props or even movie props. I've been told some of the props look like they could be of the quality to match what you would expect in a movie or TV show. So maybe I talk about some of that, share some of the things that I've learned there. So we have a large landscape of opportunities of things to talk about. And then one other thing, like I watch a lot of podcasts, I watch a lot of engineering videos, and there's one thing I find sort of odd about the podcast format, or even really just commentary in general, is that you get people that are kind of given the opportunity to say stuff, and it's not really checked, it's not really fully dissected, and my mind has always been one where I want to be in the details, right? The devil's in the details. I get as deep as I possibly can on a subject when it interests me. So I've done a lot of research on a lot of different topics, and if someone's having a quote-unquote hot take, I might be able to offer either more context for or against what they're saying, or at the very least offer you a summarized report out of data that's a little bit easier to consume, might make a little bit more sense. And then lastly, one thing I really enjoy is, as you can see, I'm playing Satisfactory, which is a game I really enjoy playing. And games like this, to me, something I find very therapeutic is to be able to like just turn on background noise, and that's usually like a podcast. It doesn't always have to be, but something like that. And I don't even really pay attention to it, but like it's there is a quality to it as far as like I don't find news is sufficient. It used to be when I was younger, like you'd have news in the background playing, and that sort of added a kind of ambiance where it just made things feel a little bit more alive. But it's like I don't know about anyone else, but I find people talking on Facebook to be not Facebook, excuse me, YouTube, to be a little bit more interesting. I don't know why. I couldn't tell you why, but I find that that's my preferred sound to listen to. And it sort of works in tandem with wanting to play games. So maybe I can offer that to someone else who gets to listen to my long-winded nonsense in the background while they are playing a game or doing something. So regardless, that's the sort of what and the sort of why a little bit. And then it gets really kind of the how, right? Because I mean, my setup isn't great. I did recently buy a new headset just because I was told my other headset was not very good. So I just bought a new one anyways. I feel like I'm always buying headsets, and it's just like I find some features are good about some headsets, and then other ones, and I just feel like I just mash them all together to just get a good headset. Like I kind of like these over here because these only have one earmuff, and they're like trucker headsets, and I only have one working ear, right? So it's like this works quite well. And this ear is where I had my surgery, most of my surgeries at, and it hurts quite a bit, fairly frequently. Pressure builds up on it, so I kind of don't like to have an earmuff on it too much. Now these aren't too bad because these are like completely full over, they completely cover the ear, so that's sort of nice. But it's just I have some like these were my knocking over medication here. These were my go-tos. These are Platonic Voyagers, which I had a pair of these years ago at work, and I loved them, and I don't know. I thought they were very good for multi-device pivoting, and they did, and they aren't bad. I think they are pretty good still. These that I'm wearing now are the HyperX Cloud 3s, and then I have a pair of Bose somewhere, and then I have a pair of Sony somewhere. Now the Bose and the Sonys kind of do sort of the same thing. They're supposed to be multi-device compliant with AI like managed nonsense in it to kind of figure out what are you doing. Do they detect if you're walking, and they may switch the active noise canceling so that you can pick up certain noises. So obviously, somebody doesn't run up and shank you while you're going for a walk, kind of thing. So they try to do some of that stuff, but then like the microphone quality is just absolutely abysmal. Like no one can hear me on it at all, and it's like so weird to spend $300-400 on a pair of headphones to just have issues with the fact the input just isn't there. So that's weird. And then these Voyagers weren't exactly cheap either. They're more business orientated. And I think I will still use those more so for work. These, I don't know if these even offer a wireless capability. They're 3mm jack with a USB adapter, which I think is kind of cool. So it gives you a couple of different options for your inputs. And so far, I like them. I may need to do some tinkering with certain things. I have to switch. Like I can't do stereo sound anymore. Everything has to kind of be mono because again, I only have one working ear. And I usually do all the balance to one side. Which is funny because I was watching a YouTube video a while back. Not even a video, it was a stream. The Lolcow Live podcast, Keemstar's Nonsense, and they were doing like a Trump rally, right? And I was sitting there listening to it, and I was like, well, there's no audio, right? And what he was rebroadcasting, essentially, when they did it, they were doing it on mono audio, but they did it on the left, and I'm on mono audio on the right. So to me, it was like I could hear the podcast, but I couldn't hear the rebroadcast, and I didn't even know why. I didn't even know that this was a problem. I was scratching my head confused. I was like, why am I not? I just figured they, that they weren't aware that they weren't broadcasting any audio whatsoever, but it actually turns out they were just single channel on a channel I can't hear at. So that's been kind of weird, and that I've been dealing with that for a little bit more than a year now. But I look at some of my old videos, and some people ask, hey man, whatever happened to you? What have you been up to? They saw my videos when I was like 22, 23 years old, and they ask how I'm doing. And I've lived life. I'm a millennial that now is slowly evolving into the next stage, into boomerdom. Turn 40 soon. I mean, I got another year until I turn 40, about a year and a half. But we got some mileage now. So with that mileage comes refinement and lessons learned, and there's some pretty cool stuff to talk about there. And I make some friends and I lose some friends, and I think we all can sort of relate to that. Life is, there's some constants. Like my fiance, my fiance, she has a friend she's known since high school, and they still see each other on a fairly regular basis. They go do things together, and to me that's so wild because I don't really have that. I mean, I there's people I know since high school, and like I saw one of them for the first time in like 10 years this past summer, who I was really close friends with in high school, and this year was our 20th year anniversary. And it's like, 20 years later, you really don't know what's happened to a lot of these people. The few people I talk to through social media tell me, a lot of people have been, especially here in Central Florida, that people have been locked up or they're dead, or the high school reunions here, the 20-year reunions here, are definitely lighter than where they probably are in other places. But I mean, I almost didn't make it to this age, right? Last year with all my surgeries, I had brain bleeds and some pretty serious complications, brain clots, seizures, and all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, the way I like to tell people is, I got so close to the Grim Reaper, I can tell you what brand cologne he wears, which it happens to be Cool Water by David Hasselhoff. And you have to be kind of old to get that reference, right? Because I don't even know if they even make that anymore. But anyways, so like, it's kind of the gist of what I'm doing here, and as previously mentioned, I have made a really successful life for myself. I did it, Ma. I made it. I accomplished a lot of things, and despite of a lot of setbacks and challenges and deficits and disadvantages, and I still managed it. And so I only bring that up, one, because I do really, really want to share some of the ways that I did it, because I sort of figured out some of the tricks to this game that we call life, some of the glitches, if you will, and it'll be easier, because I feel like I'm having a lot of the same conversations, right? Like people ask me, for investing advice or coding advice or whatever advice. I feel like I'm having a lot of the same conversations. So to me, it will be a vehicle of utility to be able to create a video and then just point someone to that video. Like, okay, if you need to learn, here's my video where I sort of cover that subject. I don't have to keep repeating it, because I want to be able to pass that information on and have the reach for those that are interested to learn about these things. But I sometimes don't like having the same conversations, more so because like I sort of feel like, at least for me, I lose interest in topics after I have so many conversations about them. I don't want to keep having that conversation, which is something that I find very unusual about people that are like fixated on doing the same like memes, the same trolling and shit posting time and time again. I don't really understand how that to them is entertaining after 5 years of doing it, but hey, you do you. So anyways, my point is that I'm doing well enough in life that this to me is a vehicle of utility, and a passion. I don't even know if I'd even say passion, but like, it's something that I would do more for the love of the game, more for the ability to reach and share, rather than anything I actually want to get out of it from a monetary standpoint or anything outside of that. I'd be much more interested in meeting people and sharing my thoughts with like-minded people, because it's very hard to find people that I mesh well with. So obviously, if you see the videos and you're like, hey, I like the way this guy talks, I like the way he chats, then reach out. I have a Discord server. I can get you invited to. Possibly may expand upon it when Throne of Liberty comes out. In a few days, I think early access should be releasing on that. So, I feel like I'm about ready to start a guild again. I usually do this at least once a decade. I make a guild that's usually quite successful because I put a lot of time and energy into it, and I may end up doing that again. I don't know yet on where I'm at with Throne of Liberty. I played the Korean version of it, enjoyed it, didn't like the end game, don't know how well it's going to go with the Western markets considering the monetization and certain things I think are going to be problematic. But we'll see how that goes. But anyways, that's this. Call this a reintroduction video, right? Like, this isn't really an introduction video; it's a reintroduction. I don't think I have posted a video such as this where I'm sort of talking, having a one-sided conversation since, like I said, around the time I got into IT. I think I did some videos where I kind of covered the George Zimmerman trial and tried to make sense of it, the IRS hearings under Obama, I think. And then I think I did some other conversations like, talking about where feminism was at the time. And, it's unfortunate that I have been right over the last 10 years. There are just some things you want to be wrong about, and social issues in the way it impacts your hobbies is one of the things you want to be wrong about, right? Like, you don't want to sit there and, now Satisfactory is a great game. I enjoy this game. I really do. But this isn't where I would have envisioned I would be at this point in time. And you look around at all these video game YouTubers and they talk about how they're playing old games, or they're playing quote-unquote the cozy games, or games like this where they're non-social games anymore. Because franchises are being ran into the ground and the social climate is toxic and no one's really enjoying it, or it's hyper competitive because certain genres and certain models have sort of surfaced as the WoW clones of their time. And it leads to a point where some people, such as myself, can't really, like, we got left behind. We can't really find our place in gaming, and so now we're playing games like this. Which, again, this is a great game. This is a game I have thousands of hours on. I love it. And there have been some amazing games like Baldur's Gate 3, absolutely phenomenal game. Cyberpunk didn't release in a great state, but now it's in a good state. Love X4. So there's definitely some games out there that I think have done a very good job in the last 8 years. But the trend overall is moving in a direction that I am very concerned about, have been concerned about. It's funny listening to some of my old videos and knowing even back then, late 20-year-old me could see the writing on the wall. Now, late 30-year-old me is suffering because of it. So, anyways, I guess we'll see how all this goes from here. And if you find me annoying, boring, uninteresting, I feel you. I'm annoyed with my presence every minute of the day. But that's fine, right? Like, you don't have to like me. You don't have to like anything that I'm doing. I laid out my objectives, I think, pretty well as to what I'm trying to accomplish. So, part of this is for you, and part of this is for me, and, hopefully we make a happy little sandwich together. Later, dear.